Are you running out of modules to run with your party on the weekends? Maybe you're having trouble finding agnostic material for your games. Maybe you're like me and you like to relive the past and go back to older editions and modules that just haven't been reprinted. Maybe you want to bring all of them into your favorite edition. Or maybe you want to try some hidden gems that you used to play or you've heard people play. Well, I'm going to convince you that no matter what the edition, no matter how old the module, there's ways for you to run it. Now, especially for those of us that have played for more than a few years, we all have some memory or history of a module or campaign setting that we have played, whether it's Dark Sun or something that was published in an old magazine by TSR that we wish we could run today. And thanks to the ability of the internet, most of it's still out there. But a lot of people have trouble when it comes to playing an older edition or an older module and putting it into a new setting. Like I said, there's a lot of people that like to play the newer editions, whether it's Pathfinder 2e or 5e or the next D&D. And so they only want to play what has been officially redone. But in my experience, it doesn't take that much to transfer it over, to bring new life into these old forgotten modules. And it gives our players something that maybe we don't get nowadays. With either rehashed modules, you can get that old dungeon crawl feel. It shows the difference in what's happened over the years between the modules and how the writing has changed. Now, a lot of people have problems whenever they first pick up a module. Story is obviously going to be easy. You just RP it and tell your story the same way, whether it's 5e or first edition. The stats, the treasure, the monsters, and the encounters that you deal with. That's where people get scared. I even know people that, even though we've been playing a Pathfinder edition for 6 years almost, they don't want to run their own campaign because they're worried they might mess something up. But it's not too difficult. Yeah, there's differences. Now, a lot of times people get worried when it comes to playing an older module or something that has been released in one of these newer editions. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of times when the modules are going to be updated, a lot of times a lot of the creatures are the same. I mean, for a character, a party of adventurers, these are going to be substantially similar in what you would have to deal with between one edition to another. There's a few things that we've found when going and updating different editions. But a lot of times, as long as you look at the math behind the editions and understand what makes and how they scale, it's pretty easy. Attack bonus is one of the things that changes drastically in editions. A lot of them start about the same level, so there's not that big of a difference. But by the time you get to the later levels, they are worlds apart. If anyone doesn't know what these are what we used to have to deal with when it came to iteratives and your attack bonus for your class, which was specific depending on how you advanced. And we use this in Pathfinder, in 3.5, 3rd edition. Characters use an advancement system in 5e using proficiency. The proficiency system is why you start where you do and how come, one, you don't really need equipment to go all the way to level 20 in 5th edition, but because they've replaced it with this proficiency and then they've leveled things out like they have, it one makes it easier to balance some of your characters or your PCs, but it also makes it so that it's easy with an advancement in your character's progression when it comes to just going through levels. It also means that if you know the math with the proficiencies, it's not too hard to transfer. Now, I find that a lot of things transfer fairly easily when it comes to going from like 3.5 to 5e. A lot of this is going to be around the same CR. In fact, even other editions like Challenge Rating 5 here, Pathfinder was a 5, since they all kind of came off of each other, came from 3.5, they all progressed, everyone got used to this, it was all branches of something that they loved. Then the challenge rating, the idea of where that monster belongs in your adventuring path, has kind of stayed fairly similar. Now, there's been some pretty big changes depending on what the monster is, but a lot of times I find that I can still throw trolls at the same level of parties, and goblins are almost always going to be your first level opponents, or kobolds. Oh, kobolds. Speaking of kobolds, one of the easiest ways whenever you're trying to play an older or a different module in a different rule set, like say taking a Pathfinder adventure path and running it in 5e, which I've done, then you're going to be looking at things like Kobold Fight Club. Kobold Fight Club is an easy way for you to take the monsters and see a challenge rating for them. And it will tell you how hard it is, how much experience you're looking at. You can also use these, like with Juneberry Journal for Pathfinder for 3.5, and you can use them to compare the difficulty presented in the module you're looking at to what you're wanting to play it in, whatever edition it is. And things are a little bit more different as you progress, because taking a look at CR 20 characters, when it came to goblins with 5e, hit points, AC, we'll just look at cross-platform to Pathfinder and see that there's a lot difference in the AC, little in the HP, but you go all the way up to CR, 20 characters, or 20 monsters, and you're looking at a higher AC and a higher HP. The reason for this is going to be, like I said, the progression. Because in Pathfinder 3.5 and in some editions, you're looking at progressing because not just your class, but a lot of it's going to be also coming from stats and equipment and improving your weapons and all of this extra strength. It's not capped at 20. So sometimes you'll have a creature that is a little more dangerous in one of these settings, but the CRs for the different setting kind of match up. And then, of course, with Pathfinder 2e, it's equipment, and they use different things kind of similar to like what proficiency bonuses does, depending on your class, which is why it increases even more than some of the older editions. But if you want to run things like Rise of the Rune Lords, which is a fantastic AP, it takes your characters from level 1 to level 17. You jump all over Galorian, and it's great. My characters talk about it, or my players talk about it years after. And I've ran this up through the second book, I think it was, or so, with a 5e game before work prevented us from continuing. You can run Rise of Tiamat in any of your other settings. Just because you've played it in 5e, maybe you want to see how you'll do differently depending on having characters with different abilities. And in some cases, having different abilities or having more abilities, like some of the characters in the older editions, like 3.5, Pathfinder, a lot of time does. As a DM, you have to take that into consideration. But I've played Red Hand of Doom in different editions, and it worked out great. And we've taken older editions and older games and brought them up to a more modern system. Ravenloft. And being as popular as it has been, it's been brought up to 5e. But there's nothing keeping you from running it into one of the older editions. Now, having things like Pathfinder, you might want to pull up a 3.5 version or something. But being able to fight Strahd is something that has gotten a lot of people into the ttrpg. So it's something that a lot of people, regardless if they stick with their original edition or with 5e, might want to play. And there's nothing keeping you from doing it. You can go back and grab one of the first modules ever produced and play it with your 5e characters. Like I said, there's a few things when it comes to editions, like you're going to have to watch fighting a whole bunch of Constitution zapping undead. But otherwise, there's nothing stopping you from running any edition with your players. Loot is probably the worst thing when it comes to transferring or changing editions. Even going from one edition to the next, they change how loot affects your characters. So 3.5 to 5e, big difference. As I stated, it's not that big of a deal because of the way the advancement is in 5e to get loot. That's why a lot of things are, you get so many uncommon by this level, you get so many by rare at this level. Meanwhile, older editions, you had strict gold that we used to do. And the reasoning for it was you were expected to have this much wealth into your character. Same things with a lot of the older editions, even though that the numbers are a little different, because this right here is 3.5. And 5e, you're looking at progression with much smaller gold amounts, but like I said, also a lot less magical items. But I find that if you just cut out a lot of the excess loot, one, you don't have party members fighting over loot, which is almost guaranteed, but you make it a little bit easier with some of the newer editions whenever you take the old stuff and cut it back. Now, if I wanted to run a 5e campaign and put it into an older edition like 3.5 or Pathfinder, I'm going to have to do some math and add a bunch of gear. But it's worth it to be able to run any edition in any game that you want. I've heard some people that specifically didn't want to play a setting or a module because even though they liked the idea of the story of it, or they liked and wanted to play through Witchlight, they didn't want to play it in 5e. So you just look at the numbers, pull out a CR calculator, and have a stab at it. Also, you hop on forums and Reddits. There are lots of campaigns that already have things transferred. You can find on Reddit where people have transferred this entire campaign into a comparable 5th edition or Pathfinder 2e when it first released. And so the community's there. Look online. Don't be scared. Have fun. That's what it's about. If you like this video, check out my others. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. If you have any tips or requests, drop them in the comments below. And until next time, may your crits be epic, your adventures legendary, and your gaming table filled with laughter.